Now, I invited Brooks CEO Jim Weber to share his story for my first meeting because I have long admired his business skills, leadership style, and most importantly, his principles. Jim's professional journey includes roles in the branded consumer products industry as Chairman and CEO of Sim Sports, President of O'Brien International, Vice President of the Coleman Company, and various roles with the Pillsbury Company. He joined Brooks as CEO in 2001 and is credited for the Seattle-based company's aggressive turnaround story, focusing the team solely on delivering personally inspiring products and experiences that keeps people running. The business and brand caught the attention of Warren Buffett, who declared Brooks a standalone Berkshire Hathaway subsidiary in 2012. In 2016, I took on the role of producing the Special Olympics USA Games. I had big dreams for what I knew could be one of the more special events that Seattle had ever hosted. And I also knew that the companies we partnered with would heavily influence making those dreams come true. The very first meeting I scheduled was with Jim Weber and his Chief of Staff, Tamara Hills. Their response was both immediate and decisive. Count us in. Brooks branded a USA Games shoe. They donated a portion of sales to Special Olympics and custom fit a free pair of Brooks shoes to each of the 3,000 athletes. And just as importantly, nearly 100% of their 1,000 employees volunteered at the event. Jim recently authored the book, Running with Purpose, and Laurel, I love that you brought yours to be signed. Of course you would have that. And I have to say, I've read this book and it's one of the best reads on following a principled, never wavering North Star in leadership, business, and life. Please welcome the CEO of Brooks and my friend, Jim Weber.
Thank you, Beth. The biggest, best event we've ever been a part of was the Special Olympic Games here in Seattle. Hundreds of our employees got involved, and that was an amazing opportunity. Really excited to be here. The energy of Rotary is amazing, and the world needs positive energy and forward motion. So thanks for having me today. Really cool. I'm just going to take a few minutes to share a bit of the Brooks story and leave some time for questions. So I'm going to go fast. Leading with purpose in a dynamic world, and we're all living in a dynamic world. Change is everywhere, so it's something we all have in common. And I'm going to share some of this story. So as Beth mentioned, I wrote a book. Who knew? It wasn't on my to-do list 2 years ago, but I did it, and it just came out in April, and I'm proud to get the Brooks story out. Brooks is a great story. It's a bit of a David and Goliath story. We're a small niche player in our industry. The biggest player is $45 billion in revenue. We're a smaller portion of that. It's a great challenger brand story, David and Goliath story. It's a turnaround story. And it's a purpose-driven brand story. So I feel like I have the best job in Seattle. Sorry, everybody, but it's the reason I'm still there, and we've told that story in the book. So today, this is our 21st year of a performance running focus exclusively. We're based here in Seattle. Proud to be in the Fremont neighborhood. Thank you, Susie Burke. You know, we're in the performance running gear business, and we have this Run Happy brand ethos. It's really about welcoming everyone in to run. And Laurel James is sitting next to me today. She started this whole thing in the 70s, one of the first running stores in the world. And so now, running is a very unique market. It's one of the original sports, maybe a foundational sport to everything, from the track and field and cross country in high school all the way to the Olympics. But for many, it's an investment in themselves. 150 million people worldwide run really to invest in themselves. Some to compete, but more often it's about health, wellness, and so it's a huge global market, and that's why we've stayed focused on it. So we just passed $1 billion in revenue in 2021. We'll do about $1.3 billion this year, supply chain constrained. And it's an outcome of really an intense focus on the runner and people to execute well, whether it's product or service. It's not an overnight success. It wasn't easy, but the backstory is a colorful one. So, you know, we're in a dynamic world, and I'm just going to share a few stories of how we've navigated some of the changes in this world. And again, many of them, you know, many of these we have in common. All of you have had to navigate these things too. So, going back to my tenure, I started in 2001. I was actually on the board before that. But there were sort of four major, things that we've navigated, kind of one every 5 years, as it turns out. And I'm just going to focus on two of them and share briefly today. And obviously, there's more to the story. The first one is in 2001, where we rebooted our entire brand, our entire business to focus only on run and runners. And it required courage. A bit of Brooks history, just like every other brand. We're an athletic footwear and apparel brand. Every category. We started in Philadelphia, and you had to keep the factory busy, so you couldn't make one kind of shoe in those days. Bowling shoes, wrestling shoes, baseball cleats, football cleats, you had to do everything. But we've always been in run. And in the 70s, Brooks was right there when the running, jogging boom began to happen. And Brooks struggled as a business. It wasn't as successful as others, but it made its way through the 80s and into the 90s. And in 2001, though, it struggled again. It was nearly bankrupt. And so we rebooted it to focus on run. We were losing money. We had lots of debt in a private equity buyout. So what we did is we burned the boats on everything that wasn't focused on the runner. And that meant only performance running shoes at the premium side. We exited a lot of product lines. We exited a lot of distribution. So many of the athletic footwear business, so many of the shoes in the athletic footwear business are casual shoes or kids shoes or lifestyle shoes. Those are great businesses and they're huge businesses, but our brand wasn't that strong. So we walked away from about 40% of our sales and just focused on runnability in everything that we built and created a North Star. We were sitting in a conference room in the first year of this turnaround where we were trying to get profitable and reduce debt and stabilize the company. We sat in a conference room and spent 2 days to come up with a purpose. At first it was kind of a mission, but we decided to call it a purpose, which is kind of forever and always out there, and it's aspirational. You kind of never get there with a purpose. And so we came up with inspiring everyone to run their path. And so that was a unique positioning. It wasn't about epic athletic achievement, breaking the tape. It was about everyone putting one foot in front of another. Now this has been in place for 21 years. And, we anchored on the run because everybody that moves, it makes your day better. One foot in front of another. If you get out for a run, if you move, it just makes your day better. Add up days can make your life better and balance it out. And add up 150 million people, and it can actually influence the world. And so, again, we're focused on runners, the running community, and again, anyone. I think walking counts. This is where I'm at in life today. It's slow running. So that's been our focus. And in this first, reboot to run in 2001, this is where the courage was required. No other major brand had done running only or one category only and been successful. But we decided, we thought we could actually be more meaningful and relevant and be better at trying to be really good at one thing. And of course, it had better margins. And so it worked, which is why I'm here. If any of these things didn't work, they wouldn't invite me. I wouldn't be here. So I'm going to skip the next two, which I talk about in the book a bit. But 2008, 2009, we all remember the Great Recession. Not an easy time for consumer products. And of course, we had this barefoot phenomenon too, which was inspired by a book that was interesting for our industry too. And then in 2015 and 2016, millennials came into our world in their mid-20s, and they were different. They just related to sports and athletic activities very differently, the gym, Orange Theory, and the like. Plus, the digital shopping behavior really hit hard, and lots of stores were suffering. But I'm going to move forward to Recover to Run, which is the pandemic. And all of us have lived through that. So everybody could write a book on the last 2 years, and you may. We all had to navigate this incredible change and disruption with no playbook. Nobody knew what this virus is all about. Nobody knew how it was going to work. None of us knew. And so, and then you add to that the economic collapse. We sell through retail stores and online, but 90% of our units are through independent retail stores. We have 14,000 stores in Europe and America that closed down in 2 weeks. And that's just, the lights went out. And many of us experienced that, right? Where no cash flow, no sales, and everything just went dark. So the economy was crazy. And then, of course, just this reckoning of injustice and systemic racism. All of that, obviously, we were dealing with everyone else in the world. We had to deal with it. So we put this Recover to Run plan together, and we had a hypothesis that we thought people might start running through this period because it could be COVID friendly, right? Getting outside, social distance. And we'd seen that before in recessions, that running isn't recession proof. But even when times got tough and unemployment went up, we found that running made the cut, kind of like maybe a good cup of coffee. People, it's convenient, it's out your back door, all you need is a pair of shoes, so to speak. And so we created this hypothesis around, retail closed and runners start to recover, the industry starts to recover. And then we created signals on the spread of the virus and global macro issues, what we saw in runners, and we were tracking that in new ways, and then listening to our retailers who were blind because they were closed. Obviously, the web was open. So here's just one snapshot, though. We had all of our field marketing people, some 50 people, counting runners at the same park every day at 4 p.m. on popular running trails to see if the number of runners were growing. And guess what? Week by week by week, every week it started to grow. This is Strava data, which obviously a lot of people post their workouts, bike rides, runs in. And you can just see what happened from March on. So this was super helpful to us, this runner focus. We turned our supply chain back on as we started to see this activity and retail activity just through internet go up. So by May, we were back in business and turned the supply chain back on, and sure enough, running recovered. We felt really, really fortunate. We ended up 2020 up 27% in revenue, an all-time record year, in a crazy pandemic year. And that I can tell you that was not what we were thinking in April when the lights were off, and all of us have been through that. So we feel really fortunate. We feel so fortunate that for us, the category survived that. But our purpose and runner focus was key to that. Obviously, we're still dealing with disruption. All of us are. The virus is still out there, especially in our supply chain, but it's still out everywhere. And so it continues, and we're navigating through that. It's colorful, it's interesting, it's challenging, but you don't have a choice. You just have to navigate through it. And we've been fortunate that we're able to do that. So in 2020, we were up 27%. Last year, our factory base, half of it, stopped making shoes for 3 months. And that's a big deal. It's like I describe it as a lost crop in a farm. You just don't make that up. It's gone. So we were growing 43% coming into September. We ended up the year 31% up. So we still had a fabulous record year last year. But now we're finally back on production. So just like everyone, we're navigating the craziness, and it's not easy. But fortunately, I think our products are better than they've ever been. I believe our brand is well positioned for where people are in their fitness and health and wellness and running lives right now, and we're gaining market share. So that's been really rewarding for our team. We also came through the pandemic. We've been hiring people and building out and trying to scale this strategy. Because we literally come from 60 million to $1.3 billion. The company has morphed several times, and we're morphing into a $2 billion company right now. So we hired 500 people last year, virtually. It's insane. It's crazy. I don't recommend it. It's hard. But we feel really fortunate that we're continuing to build out this culture. And so, just a few thoughts to share. Your purpose is going to be tested. I mean, we just heard this fabulous story of one of your co-members and how he navigated through cancer, right? So that happens in business all the time. And I think for us, this North Star of inspiring everyone to run their path has just been so powerful in keeping us focused on the customer as we navigate all through this. And so each one of these challenges, we've come out as a stronger brand. We've come out as a stronger team and culture. And that's not an accident, it's hard work. But there are also opportunities to sort of signal who you are as a brand to your customer, to the industry, and to your employees. So even though you're tested, there are priceless opportunities to signal what you're all about and what you stand for. And so each one of these moments, we stood up and said, okay, we're for runners. How can we support you? How can we enable you? How can we inspire you? How can we follow you as you navigate trying to stay active and fit? So They're really brand signaling gold for us, especially given we compete against all these fabulous companies and brands, but our advantage is our focus, in that this is all we do. We enable people to run. So 20 years ago when I came to Brooks, I was ready to play the long game and be part of a team that was building a brand. So I put this quote on my board, my whiteboard, and it's still there today. It's a Benjamin Disraeli quote: "The secret to success is constancy of purpose." And I put it on my board at first just to remind me to stay focused and not chase shiny things, 3 years down the road. I really wanted to anchor in and be part of building a brand. But it also became, really a rally cry in moments where we had to reassess all of our assumptions. Things weren't quite working, but it was a rally cry not to veer from that purpose, because brands are built over decades. And if you change who you are every 3 years, the customer's never going to figure out who you are. And so we're really trying to build trust and consistency around who Brooks is and how we fit in as a partner with you on your running. So that's a bit of our journey. And I hope we have a few minutes left for questions. I could talk for hours on this. I love to talk about Brooks, but hopefully we got a few moments for questions. Hi. Thank you.
Well, Jim, wonderful. As a co-Berkshire company, I've been able to follow you from almost the very start, and just am so proud of what you've been able to accomplish. And I know Uncle Warren really cares about you and a bunch of the rest of us too. I have a question though. It's two different type questions. The first one is you've expanded. You are a running company, and I love it because I use your shoes all the time. They're out on the road. Yes, and I'm getting to the question: where are the shoes manufactured? So that you can tell us a little bit about your factories and what you do with them and your relationships.
Yep. So our supply chain in the athletic footwear and apparel industry is global, and we sink into that. It's not been in the United States for probably 80 or 90 years now, all the materials and such. So China was the focal point for the entire industry. It went to Vietnam in the last decade. All of our shoes were made in Vietnam up until last year. We're adding Indonesia. And we've got a 10-year vision to manufacture in each continent, just from a sustainability standpoint, closer to market, but it's going to take a lot of innovation on process and materials and everything else. So the vision is to get more regional on manufacturing. We think that's going to happen, but it's a long ways away. Right now, it's Vietnam focused with Indonesia.
Next question over here from Jan Levy.
Thanks, and I love your shoes, and I don't run, I walk. So over the last 5 years, what would you say is your most surprising and gratifying leadership lesson?
That's actually a great question. I think, I think the smartest people I know are curious and they're learning all the time, right? One of the most curious persons I know is Warren Buffett. Incredible. At age 90-something, he's still learning. So that's the mode I try to be in, and I think, what we've had to learn how to lead people with ambiguity, because no one knew the answers on this. Our factory's close in Vietnam. We didn't have any answers. And so we're used to telling our customers exactly when we're going to deliver and then doing it. And the most uncomfortable thing is that we didn't know. And so you have to own that with transparency, and as a leader, you want to be confident and be able to communicate where you're going. But in these challenging, dynamic times where there's ambiguity, you don't. So you have to own that. But here's what we do know. We own the question, we don't have the answer, but here's what we're doing about it. And we had weekly town halls. When COVID hit, starting in the third week of March, we had global weekly town halls every Friday. And we told them what we were holding on the questions and that we didn't have answers for. So that skill set isn't comfortable. It wasn't comfortable for any of us as leaders, but it was the reality. And I think that's one reason we were able to keep our team with us all the way through.
Really, the one job? I've got one job. I am curious if you've talked a lot about focus. I'm a huge fan. I love your story. I like your stores. I like your shoes. Has anybody tried to get you out of this focus on running and get you more broad again? Or is 100% of everybody around you on deck with that?
No, we get the question all the time. Why don't you do basketball? Why don't you do kids' shoes? Why don't you do tennis? Why don't you do football? Why don't you do something more? And we're not number one at running yet. We are now number one in broad retail in the United States. We just passed the big swoosh. But in the total market, they have a big direct business, right? They're 15% of their sales are direct. So they still sell more shoes to runners than we do. We do shoe counts at races though, which I love because marathon, it's a gear choice. We're always number one or number two shoe at marathons and half marathons. And oftentimes we're number one, which I just love. It's my favorite stat. But yeah, I think my answer is that, we're not number one at anything yet. And we've got so much opportunity to grow. Our goal isn't to be bigger than anybody else. Our goal is to be the absolute best, most meaningful brand in run for runners around the world. That's more than a $4 billion company, much more. And so we've got a 2030 vision around $4 billion doing what we're doing now, but doing it more globally and better, we hope. We're still building a brand, and it's just, that's so fun. So, and that's what Berkshire Hathaway likes about us, frankly. They want us to continue to do that and build the brand.
Last question.
How did you get to Fremont?
Oh my gosh. Susie, you'll remember, moving a company is not for the faint of heart. Now we're all in this hybrid work mode. It's crazy for all of us, but we were out in Bothell in a business park in a couple buildings, and it didn't have an identity. It didn't have a sense of place. And we were looking at buildings from I-90 north to the top of the lake, east side Seattle. And I looked at 50 different buildings for Brooks, because you don't move a company often if you're smart, I think. Once in a generation. And we found this piece of dirt that was in Fremont, Wallingford area, and it was a perfect place for a running company. It is a perfect place for a running company. It's on the Burke-Hillman Trail. It's obviously in Seattle. We love it. We feel it's such a great home for Brooks, so we're glad to be here. Thank you. Good. All right.
Thank you, Jim, for sharing your story and so many great insights in your success today. And we look forward to continued success. In recognition of your generosity of time, Seattle 4 has contributed to Harvest Against Hunger, a Rotary District 5030 project and nonprofit agency which provides healthy meal components to food banks. 600 servings of healthy produce has been given in your name. I'd like to say thank you to Ken and Kathy for serving as fielding our questions from the members today. And also want to acknowledge that our club greatly benefits from the sponsorship of several members. And I'd like to express my gratitude especially to our gold sponsors, which is a really big deal. Liz Powell of Remax on Market and Bob Alexander. Also sponsors are Joel Farrell, Morgan Stanley, Dominic Musafia, Seattle Divorce Options, Jacobson Jarvis, Certified Public Accountants, Matt Bretlin, NepTech Pro Bono IT Services, and Live Oak AV.